Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, CMO at World Football Summit. Today, we are very proud to kick off a new series in the World Football Summit podcast aimed at celebrating and encouraging female leadership in football. And to celebrate this, we are doing things a bit differently on this episode. Rather than having one guest to kick it off, we have gone into the vault and rescued some of the best quotes from female speakers at different World Football Summit events of 2022 on what it takes to lead, challenges, mindset, and so much more. The speakers you will hear from in this episode include, among many others, Cindy Parlow-Cone, Maggie Murphy, Susan Destombes, Danita Johnson, Lina SouLouKou, or Ebru Koksal. Then, throughout the month of March, we will speak with different female trailblazers who are helping shape the future of football, and we will continue to bring in remarkable female leaders on an ongoing basis. Before going into the episode, though, I did want to ask you, are you or do you know of any other female changemakers in the industry or looking to get their foot in the door? If so, you should know that we have launched this special ticket for female leaders in sports, which grants you access to an exclusive workshop with other industry leaders, unique discounts, and more. This is your chance to take the next step in your career and grow within the industry we all love. Head over to www.worldfootballsummit.com. Again, that's www.worldfootballsummit.com and submit your request. And with that, I hope you get the most out of this episode. Let's get to it. Let's start with the main lessons on leadership that some of these amazing ladies shared during the different panels at World Football Summit events. Experience is the queen of it all. And on this clip, Lina SouLouKou shares her experience at Olympiacos prepared her for the opportunity at the European Club Association.
I mean, starting from the pressure, running the daily business of a club like Olympiacos, the most successful Greek club, the pressure is really high, but also productive because, during the 4 years of my term there, we managed to win 4 leagues in a row, regularly participating in European competition, mainly Champions League, and also in Europa League qualifying until round 16. And at the same time, building processes in order to develop players and manage to transfer them on better leagues and trying not to compromise the club's performance on that. The pressure was really high, and the visibility that these kind of jobs have, are not like any other business. But at the same time, along with this responsibility, I felt the responsibility that I needed to share my journey, and so far my journey, and try in a way to leverage in the industry, in this highly male dominated industry, in order to bring some cultural change.
But the reality is that women need to get meaningful roles within the organization because, at the moment, not many are leading critical business areas like finance, commercial, and so on. Just as Maggie Murphy, CEO at Lewis FC, points out.
We are different. I'm the female CEO. I have a female sporting director. Our board membership, I think, is about a third is female. I think the really crucial thing is you can't just put someone on the board. You then have to listen to them. And that's becoming the hard thing, because sometimes I'll meet someone and they say, oh, we've got a woman on our board, or hey, we've got this woman over here. And then I ask, which committees are they on? They're not on the finance committee. They're not on the nominations committee. They're on the diversity committee. It's like you get a woman in and then you just ask her to diversify stuff. But you don't actually listen to her in the serious places where decisions around finance and investment and sponsorship is made. So you have to bring people in and then you have to listen to them. And sometimes that has a real effect on a very, very small level, but it has a huge impact on the daily lives of your players or your staff.
Along the same lines, Susan Destombes from COSAFA believes that once in the boardroom, women should be empowered and trusted to take risk.
It's all very well having having women come into the association, to any business, but if we're just talking about the association specifically. But when they're there, they need to be they need to be given the tools. They need to feel a real part, of it. And we do find, within the football structures that women are there, but they are often tokens. To give the tools to empower them with confidence, with knowledge, in being able to really, take their place, and make themselves heard. They may have a lot to offer, but unfortunately, it is, sorry, Joe, it is still a male-dominated world.
An inherent element of being a leader implies taking risk, but sometimes many women hold back in doing so because of the possible consequences that failing could have on their career after making huge sacrifices to get to the top. Let's listen to Danita Johnson, president at DC United, Marian Reimers, one of the most contrasted sport analysts in Mexico, and Ariana Cristione, former player and current head of women's football at Next Sports, have to say about risk.
The fear in taking risk is typically we believe it's our only shot. And so a lot of women won't take the risk because they believe that it's their only shot. The same way a lot of men don't take the risk in business to do something differently because they believe it might, I don't know if they actually believe it, but it could be their only shot, right? So with that being said, we have to, I think one of the things we have to change our mentality on is knowing that we can come back. Like we can make a mistake and recover. And I know it sounds kind of odd because you see so many people fall, and especially in this world, how things happen so fast. But if that is what is destined for you, you will find your way back to it. And so I think we have to start being able to kind of take down those walls a little bit more and stop living in the fear of the unknown and make it known. And I think that will also help because it really starts to cap us in what we can actually do when we start continuing to live in that own fear of that one time. This is that one time I finally got that one job or that one thing, and you won't risk anything because you're so afraid of losing it. I learned a long time ago that when you sit on the floor with everybody else and you kind of work your way through this industry, you hear all the conversations, and most of the conversations are about voices not being heard, or I wish they would tell us more or talk about things, communication, all of that. So by the time it was my turn, and listen, it's a double-edged sword sometimes, right? When you are that vulnerable and that transparent within your company, you take a lot of risk. Most people aren't willing to take the risk. And so I'm willing to take the risk because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, at least I know I did it the way that I felt was the best. And so that comes with challenging conversations. It comes with people pushing. But what's interesting about it, on the flip side that I really love, is that you watch them do it with one another. So they will have constructive conversations with one another because I have constructive conversations with them. And they want to start to reflect what they're seeing from a leadership aspect. So it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that from the day I stepped into that club was very intentional about and work at it each and every day, even when I make mistakes. I'm not afraid to say I'm not perfect. I tell them all the time, I'm probably going to mess up, so don't be mad. It's going to happen. And they will too, right? But it's about giving that grace to build our business and our club to be the best thing possible. And we always talk about the communities we serve. And internally, if we are not reflective of the communities we're trying to serve, then why are we doing this?
I do think what you mentioned is very important. Like you need to have a support system, and you need to have people behind you. But the other thing is, and that has to do with risks. With us, it always feels like if you mess this up, you're closing the door for another one. Yeah, and we need to leave that behind because it makes everything so much bigger, and you feel like this whole amount of responsibility on your shoulders. And like, if I mess up, I'm not messing up for all humankind, as I'm not messing up for all women. So can we just leave that on the side and try and conceptualize that? But in that sense, I would also tell to the ones in the room who are starting out and who might be afraid or who don't want to take a risk. We've all felt like that. I'm sorry, that might not be a consolation, but you're not alone, and you need to reach out to others because we tend to feel alone. It happens to me, and every time I go on stage and I speak to marvelous women such as yourselves, I'm like, okay.
I think we've probably all taken risks, just like most people in this audience, male or female, have taken risks in your career and trying to step forward. And I think I'm really lucky that I'm not afraid to take risks, and I'm not afraid to speak out, and even when I'm not supposed to. And I think that's key, and probably most women on this stage have done that, and that's why they're able to be where they are. So I don't have an exact example of risk-taking for you, but I think sitting up here in front of everybody when we could fall off of these high stools would be a risk.
To overcome setbacks, a leader must be resilient, and Cindy Parlow-Cone, president at US Soccer, certainly knows what that means. Not only from her playing days, but also for having to take over her new role in the times when the football world literally stopped because of the pandemic.
You know, for me, it is about the ability to manage disruptions and to be able to adapt quickly. I'm a former player, so it's not very different, right? If different situations are thrown at you. You have a game plan, but as the team does something else, you have to be able to adapt. And so for me as a business leader, you have to be able to adapt and maintain your business operations, your people, your assets, and to continue to build your brand. And then as you build your brand builds resiliency as well. So then as the next things come at you, you can withstand them. And I think it's kind of cyclical that like you have to be resilient, make your brand resilient, and then as you take on other challenges, you're able.
One of the aspects that many female leaders struggle with is presence, making themselves felt and respected. Let's listen in how Ariana, or Lola Ogumbote, director of women's football at Burnley FC, share real-life examples of how they do this despite the challenges.
I would say too, my recommendation is, which is not easy and it's going out there, but make yourself big. Like, if you're the only woman at the table, don't like try to take that little space, kind of push the guy over, like push the guy's arm off the seat. Like, honestly, I get in a plane, no matter what, I put my arms, even if I'm super uncomfortable, on the armrest so that the guy sits next to me, he cannot take the armrest. Just like, I'm sitting here and making space, and I think you have to make space for yourself, and then when my friend comes and she wants to share, I'm going to push some guy and let her come sit next to me. And it sounds so silly, but it's something that I consciously do, and I'm bigger, so it helps a little bit. But make yourself known in the room. You already are known because you're sometimes the only one. Don't ever be like, try to bring others with you, but also, okay, you know I'm here, so let me make sure you know I'm here.
Yeah, I think most women in the game can reel off experiences, sadly, of differential treatment based on their gender. I think for me, my experiences of that happened during my time coaching in China, and just perceptions on what and who a woman should be and where their place should be was kind of startling for me as a coach. And when you're coaching, at the time I was coaching adolescent boys, and that's a nuance in and of itself, whoever's coaching that group. But I remember walking onto the field and just feeling that kind of amazement that I was there. It was almost like, well, who are you? Are you here to give us our kit? Like, what is your role here? And I remember just trying to be I can be quite a fiery personality, and I knew that wasn't going to resolve the situation. And so we just played football. And I think that's one of the beauties of the sport in and of itself, is that it can remove those barriers. And once they had understood that I could play the game equally, if not better than they could, they were open to my coaching style. And should that always be the case? Probably not. It should just be that I'm here to coach, and that should be it. But I think there's an opportunity for a lot of people in those positions to use it as a teaching moment rather than take it so personal, and for it to become a negative experience. We obviously all want to be in a world where it's not even a discussion. We don't even have to talk about it in an ideal world, but we're not quite there yet. And so in this time period, I think it's important to reflect, what can you do to turn that situation from a negative into a positive?
Obviously, there are other ways in which a leader can get respect as a leader. One of them, undoubtedly, is helping the people in your team grow, develop, and being their authentic selves. Danita Johnson knows this quite well after her amazing career at the NBA, the WNBA, and now as president at DC United.
I think one of the biggest things, and I have people that have been with our club for 10 plus years, that when I came in have already been there, and they've been through multiple leaders. And there's a consistency in what they say they show up now more authentically in themselves because of the style in which we've shifted. And it doesn't mean we don't reach goals. It doesn't mean that we still don't, do what we need to do from a business side, but we try to create a place where you can show up as yourself in the best format. And so I do hear that. I hear it from our team. And I think even for our owners, it's something in the dialogues that we have back and forth in our conversations that I'm able to feed back up to them as well.
The truth is that few better than Danita to give her opinion on that. But a leader not only responds to her team, she must also be able to command the respect of different stakeholders. On that note, how does Cindy Parlow-Cone approach her relationship with sponsors? Let's find out.
You want to have a good relationship with your partners, but when everything is going well, it seems good. But when things are going bad, it's really those relationships that matter, because once you have those contracts, you sign them, they should be thrown into a drawer and hopefully never looked at it again, because you have to rely on those relationships through good times and bad. And so,
but being a leader obviously commands respect and even fear. It is absolutely normal. So how does someone like Danita dance with fear? Well, it's all about mindset.
It's earned over time. You don't walk in the door and just I'm going to go and do this or do that. I think it is an earned thing that you have to earn over time. You earn respect. You add people to your circle, as you mentioned, that strengthen that opportunity, that you feel more comfortable in doing those things that may feel uncomfortable to you. But it's tough. As we're speaking about this, I can kind of make it sound simple, but it's not a simple thing. It takes a lot of work, and it's a daily practice and a mindset that you really have to get into. I remind myself daily, I probably overthink it way too much, but it is that. I still have my own fears, but I know I got to get up and go. I got to get up and try.
Overcoming fear, in many instances, is a matter of trust. And when we speak about leading teams and sports businesses, this is often achieved by feeling prepared for the role. And for this, the value of education is unmatched. Let's listen to Lydia Monier-Powell, Chief Operations Officer at the South African Football Association, weigh in on the importance of education.
It's about being intentional about growing the involvement of women in football. Someone who's playing football right now doesn't just wake up after their football is over and decide they want to go into administration. I'm a very big fan of linking education to football, because when I was studying my BCom honors in accounting, I was playing for Banyana. At some point, I was doing my audit articles at the same time with EY. So I go out there and speak to the girls that are at university, and also those that are at university as well, because you have to. The last thing you want is to see another girl or any football player who's on the street after their football career is over.
Another amazing thought on the value of education was shared by Romani Pinnock, founder of Badgers Academy, during WFS Africa.
When we talk about stereotypes and gender, I think we must also look broader at this fear of differences.
Yeah.
So yes, anyone's going to make a mistake in a role.
Yeah.
Is that really the problem, or is it that you're nervous to hire someone that you wouldn't know how to make a conversation with them because they're so different to you?
Okay. Yeah, true.
And if we can get through that through education,
Yeah.
I think we can change countries.
Yeah.
Because and the great thing about football is that we're all the same when we're out there, except for you, our captain, who's our boss. But it levels us, and we can use that as the education step to say it doesn't matter who you are. When you're out here, we're all the same, and we've got the same goal.
Yes.
So I think it's team sports such a powerful tool in that regard.
Yeah.
So whatever education system you plug in,
Yes.
you can just use the sport.
But even female leaders have all that. There are certain things that remain out of control. The clearest one is that if there's no support from the leading figures in the sports business, most efforts will be in vain. Dr. Mariam Melosime Mbata reflected on this very topic while moderating her panel at WFS Africa.
I believe that, beginning to tackle this situation, we must involve both male and female.
Yeah.
It's not just a solution for women to keep speaking up. It's also the other way that men really need to, put their foot down, especially towards those that are really, being biased about women. And sometimes, like the chairman said, sometimes it's sad when it's even from the top leadership,
Another key element is visibility, giving coverage to leaders and initiatives trying to pave the way forward for others. Marian, given her experience across media, knows this quite well.
So the thing about this is that the way in which we represent the world in media has to do with the way we interpret the world. So if we don't see this, this won't be happening, and we have been listening to this numerous times. But it also has to do with how we represent women and how we represent diversity. It doesn't only have to do with the quantitative aspect of the investigation, but also the qualitative fact. And the thing is that we see media and we read news stories that reinforce gender stereotypes. We talk about women in a certain way. We have panels that talk about us in a certain way and that do not reflect what we actually want to come across with.
But at the end of the day, it should not be that complicated. Dr. Melosime Mbata has a clear opinion on this topic. Men and women complement each other.
Romani said it very well. Men must be part of this transition because we cannot leave each other behind. And it's also probably a good pointer to remind ourselves that men and women are not competitors. We complement each other,
Ultimately, though, despite the inner challenges or the external forces, there is one piece of advice that any leader, male or female, should always keep in mind. And it comes to us from Lina, and it is a fantastic way to end this section.
Be yourself. I mean, I think I became a better manager when I admitted that I don't know everything. I'm not the smarter person in the room, so it's okay. And being a woman in this industry is even less intimidated, it's okay not to know everything, ask questions, explain to me like I'm a 2-year-old, it's fine. And, at the same time, it's really important to build a system, to all these women or professionals that at some point they will feel that there's something they are not doing well or they are overwhelmed or anything, to have some support from other figures that can really support him and help him to go further. I mean, the industry needs you, so you need to be there.
Okay, so now that we understand some of the mental frameworks some of the most recognized female leaders in football adopt, we were curious to know which were some of the biggest opportunities they identified for the industry. There is one that stands out above the rest, and that is women's football. And we could not agree more. So, what were some of the quotes picked up from WFS events in 2022? Let's start with Cindy Parlow-Cone, who shares with confidence her thoughts.
I think there's huge opportunities in a lot of different areas in our game. I'll start with something that's near and dear to my heart is the women's game. I think the men's game will continue to grow, but I think the women's game is poised for exponential growth. We're already starting to see it, and this is just the beginning. So I think the time is now to invest in the women's side of the game across the globe.
Andrea Ekblad, who leads the women's sports strategy at Destombes, has a similar train of thought.
I believe that this is the most dynamic period ever for professional women's football, and it's happening now, and also now it's unstoppable.
But for this potential to materialize and become sustainable, resources are needed. And for the time being, these are not flowing in. Just as Ebru Koksal from Women in Football and board member and advisor at some leading football-related organizations around the world point out.
For me, sustainability, of course, for everybody, the definition is different. There's a lot of components to it, but I have always the financial perspective. And for me, I think what will make the system grow in a healthy way is a fair distribution of resources. And what I mean by that is, I think still globally only 2% of the value and money that football generates is going into women's football. And that 2% obviously is not enough to achieve that sustainability status or financial health status. So the part that would break that vicious cycle is the investment part first. So either by commercial partners, which we've seen significantly happening during the Euros, for Champions League, for some of the top leagues. And that is allowing for more visibility for the game, more than anything. And once the game is more visible, women's game, then more people realize that it's actually a quite attractive product and they start following it. So you start building the audiences, whether they are on TV, online, or coming to your stadium. So seeing more people on the stands will bring in more sponsors, more broadcasters, because they don't want to see an empty stadium, right? So that then brings obviously more investment into the game, whether it's by owners or private equity investors or once again commercial investors. And that spirals you up to better professionalism, better infrastructure, and also increases participation in the game, because there are still so many people who want to play, but they don't have access. So in that, making sure that, first of all, when a girl is interested, she's able to go and get a first taste, start continuing to play, and then find the right pathways within her country to be able to make her way up to the elite game. But it starts with, again, the decision makers. We talked about it a little bit this morning before coming in. Who is making that decision at your league, at your club, at your federation, at your confederation on how to use those resources?
Never forget that flywheel that Ebru discusses, in which getting more fans to the stadium will attract more sponsors and investors, which will help grow the game further. But the goal should not be to grow the top of the pyramid. The foundation of the game is on youth sports, which is why this quote from Romania is so relevant. Mechanisms must be put in place to grow the base of the pyramid to ensure long-term sustainability.
The thing about, you can look at women's football in a quite financial way and just forecast it, and you can see where men's football has gotten to in terms of revenues and profitability on the sponsoring side. And if you look at women's football here and on the continent as in this sort of startup mode, like, okay, what is this going to look like in 10, 20 years? It's going the same way. So it's obviously a good idea for investors to get in early. But I also think, to mine and Paul's stress, is that often the lower level football, the grassroots work, is not sexy to sponsor because it's not going to be on television and it might not produce maybe 1% stars or something like that. So as a country, as FAs, I think we really need to look at women's football holistically and say, yes, at the top we can make money. Let's make sure something's getting to the bottom so that the whole ecosystem can work effectively.
We cannot think of a better way to end this section than a quote from Maggie Murphy.
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think there are more brands getting involved. It's one of those classic things, right? Women's football has to be successful and then they'll invest. And I just hope that some of the businesses out there will understand that we haven't even scratched the surface yet. We've managed all this, rubbing 2 pennies together. Imagine if you invest. Imagine if you be part of the story, not just part of the outcome. There is so much that we can do. We don't even know where we're going yet. There are so many sponsorship activations that we haven't even thought about yet. So I want those sponsors to come in and be part of the story, not part of the outcome. And I think that's the exciting thing, and that's where we can go. But you've got to listen to us. You've got to listen to us because we've got a beautiful culture and a beautiful environment. And there is a threat that could be not contaminated, but kind of adjusted if we only focus on commercial growth right now, right here, because women's football is too special for that.
Not only is her statement full of energy, it is also true. If women's football has become what is today, with just 2% of the resources that Ebru was mentioning, what could happen if more investors, broadcasters, and partners join the party? Women's football, however, was not the only opportunity these leaders identified. Let's quickly run through some of the others. As we said, growing the base, which is youth sports, is the core of it all. Cindy Parlow-Cone sees it crystal clear.
How do I continue to grow the sport from the grassroots up? We have so many other sports in the US, and so we're competing with all of those other sports. So how do we continue to draw more and more kids and more diverse kids into our sport? Because if we don't, it's going to affect every level of the game and every aspect of the game, both on and off the field. We need to do a better job of attracting more kids to our game. And we've been really focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at U.S. Soccer, and really trying to get the more diverse kids into our game. Unfortunately, in the States, it's largely viewed as a white, upper middle class sport. And there's no reason for that. And we need to really think about that and problem solve that so that every kid in our country that wants to participate in our sport has not only the access, but equal opportunities to succeed. But more importantly, that they see themselves in our sport, because they're not going to come unless they see themselves as a part of our sport. And so we as a federation are doing a lot of work in that to increase our participation, increase how our sport is viewed in our country. And I think also it kind of goes with grassroots all the way up to the professional level, is continuously improving our coaching education. You know, the stats in the U.S. On the number of kids that drop out of our sport or drop out of all sports between the ages of 9 to 12 years old is significant. And so how do we continue to make sure the sport is fun?
And of course, we cannot forget about one of the core elements of the sports industry, maximizing the fan experience. And few better than Cindy Parlow-Cone or Maggie Murphy to share how they plan to do so.
I think other areas, you know, that we're looking to really grow the business is, one is game day experience. So, the experience when you come to a match, come to the stadium, whether it's in one of our professional leagues or one of our national team matches, what is that game day experience like? And what can we do to make that fan want to come to the stadium to experience the match, so that they're not sitting in the pub or sitting at home watching it on television, and really drawing the fans into the stadiums?
Match day experience has to be fun. You just have to get people wanting to come back. And we can't necessarily control the score, right? That's the hardest bit. So you have to kind of create something around it and be innovative and different and test things and pilot things. And because we have freedom, because we're not set our KPIs, we set our own KPIs, it means that we can try something out. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't work. So just quirky things that we've put into the match day experience. We have beach huts instead of corporate boxes. We've got a band that comes and plays. We don't pay them, they just want to come and play. We realized that maybe we should feminize the ground a little bit, because it was a very much non-league men's football club. So just little touches, like we have a sign. As soon as you walk into the ground, there's a big sign saying, there is a breastfeeding area in this club. Please just ask a steward. Again, a small touch, but people constantly talk about it. At men's games as well as women's games, we've seen people using it. So I think there's small touches that you can make.
If you think about it, these concepts, youth sports and fan experience, are two of the critical elements within the growth flywheel that Ebru discussed. And, as Andrea and Cindy shared, with them in place, the momentum will keep being unstoppable. And there you have them, the speakers at World Football Summit, paving the way for other future female leaders in football. Key takeaways for me from this amazing episode? This is not about just getting women to leadership positions. It needs to go way beyond that and empower them to lead, grow, and drive change. Second, taking risk at a certain point does not mean that it is the only shot. Any leader, woman or man, should be permitted to fail, learn, and iterate. The value of education in a powerful network is unmatched. They are what will enable smooth career transitions, professional development, and overall help the entire football ecosystem grow. Ultimately, just be yourself. That would be the main takeaway. It sounds obvious, but this is harder than it sounds for both men and women. But the best leaders in business do not play a character they are not. Over the long term, being true to yourself, your values, and your goals is what will make you succeed in the long term. Let me know your thoughts on the episode or the podcast in general by reaching out on social media. And before I let you go, I would really appreciate if you could rate and share the podcast with other friends and colleagues. This will help us reach more people in the industry who could benefit from this episode. Nothing else from my side. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the World Football Summit podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.